Hello everyone, in this lecture we will learn about Python constructor. This is a very important concept in Python. So first of all, what is constructor? A constructor is a unique method in Python that is invoked automatically when a class object is created. Let's go to our PyCharm to understand it in detail with an example. In our previous lecture, we have already learned how to create a class and how to create an object of a class and how we access class variables and methods using the object. I have told you, right, constructor is a unique method which is automatically called or invoked when we create an object for a class. But here we don't have any constructor, right? Then you might be thinking how constructor is called here when we don't define any constructor. Actually, when we create an object for the class, here you are seeing, right, object equal to car, automatically a constructor for car class is called. We call it as default constructor. So if we don't define anything, then default constructor is called. Now let me show you how default constructor looks like. So the constructor syntax is bit different in Python. If you compare it to any other programming language like Java and all, their constructor name is same as class name. But in Python, it starts with def, which is common just like any other function or method. But for the constructor, we have to give two underscores, then we have to write init, then again two underscores. Okay, here you can see, then self, then colon. Init is the keyword to declare constructors in Python. In other programming languages, constructor name is same as class name, but in Python, constructor name is always init. Then you have to add this colon, okay, and then you hit enter. Then you follow the normal code indentation which you follow when you write any method or function, okay. So here what we will do, we will just write print, okay, I am the default constructor, okay. Now let's execute it. See what you see, I am the default constructor, then this get details of the car is getting printed, okay. So what happens here? So this is the default constructor gets attached when we don't declare any constructor. But if we declare constructor, then that method is called first during object creation. That's why when this object was created, object equal to car, okay. So in that point of time, this particular method got executed. That's why you are seeing I am the default constructor. But if you don't write this particular code or you don't define the constructor, still it gets created behind the scene and we call it as default constructor. Okay, so now you understood what is default constructor. Now we will see what is parameterized constructor. Okay, so first of all, we know there are two types of variables. Okay, one is class variable and another is instance variable. So here you see, right, inside the car is the class. So whatever you are seeing, right, gear, color, so these are class variables. Variables we define immediately inside our class are called class variables, and the variables which you define inside constructor are called instance variables. So class variables will be constant no matter how many objects you create. Okay, right now we have only one object here, right, object equal to car. Okay, so similarly you can create multiple objects. Okay, let's say if you want to create something like this, object 2 equal to car, then object 2 dot get details, print object 2 dot gear. Let's say you can create one more object also. Remember one thing, we can create any number of objects for our class, but instance variables differs for each and every object, whereas class variables are constant and remain same for all objects. So first let's understand instance variables, then we'll come to the self keyword. So basically if we want to send parameters from our object to this particular class, then how we will do it? Let's say I want to send two parameters. Okay, so from this object I want to send two parameters. Then how I will do it? Okay, let us say I want to send two parameters. One is, let us say the brand name, which is, let us say Honda, okay, and then let us say the color, let us say white. Okay, these are the two parameters I want to send from this object. Okay, so these two parameters will reach the constructor first. So here we have the constructor. So these two parameters will reach the constructor first. One thing, here we have already in our previous lecture we have added this color here, right? So for now let me just comment it out. Let's forget it. So let's say we don't have any class variable. Okay, so I am just commenting out because here I am trying to take a instant variable as color also. Okay, that's why I just commented it. So we are trying to send these two parameters from our object, and first it will reach to the constructor. So here if you will see, as of now we are not sending any parameters while creating the object. So this self is a negligible one. Even if there is a self keyword here, that is negligible one. But now as we are sending two more parameters, we have to make sure that those two parameters are cached here in this constructor, otherwise it will throw an error. So let us add those two parameters. So here we have added Honda and white. So Honda is basically the brand name and this is our color, right? So I will add two more instance variables. So we will call it as, let us say brand and color. Okay. One more thing to notice here, how many arguments we are sending in our class, that many arguments should also be there in our constructor declaration, else it will throw an error. Self is default added in Python, so that will not consider it. So once constructor catches the Honda and white, now let us store that Honda and white into our class instance variables. How you will do it? So for that, what you need to do is self dot brand, self dot brand is equal to, you can say brand. Okay. Similarly, you can say self dot color is equal to color. Okay. Now here comes the meaning of self. So here brand and color are instance variables. Self is nothing but object. We have declared this obj, right? So when we create object, this object will be passed as first argument and we call that as a self in Python standard. So for that object we are attaching two variables, brand and color. See, these are two more new variables, but understand that these two variables are instance variables, not class variables. For those two variables, you are loading the values from here, Honda and white. Then why we are calling them instance variables? Because tomorrow if we want to create another object, let us say here we have created obj2 with a different value. So here we have passed Honda and white. Let us say now I want to pass, let us say Maruti, and let us say color is red. Okay. Then these variable values are changed. So these instance variables keeps on changing for every object creation, but the class variable does not change, it always remains same. Okay. Here gear is the class variable. Okay. So let us execute and see. See here what we are getting. I am the default constructor. Okay. Okay, because this is printing I am the default constructor, get the details of the car 5. Okay, we are not printing anything, right? That is why you are not able to see anything. So let us print something. So print get the details of the car. Let us say here we will say self dot brand. Okay, then we will say self dot color. Okay, and then self dot gear. Okay, let me execute now. Okay, so here you see get the details of the car. First we are seeing Honda white and 5, Maruti red and 5. So, this Honda and white, these are the instance variables, those got changed. First we got Honda and white, Maruti and red in the second time, but this number of gears 5, which is a class variable, that didn't change because this is a class variable. So, remember one thing, class variable never gets impacted with object creation, okay, it always remains same. Okay. You may have one more query, why we are always writing this self dot brand or self dot color or self dot gear, okay, because in Python we can never call a variable with its name, we have to always attach it with this self, then dot, then that particular variable. Here self is nothing but object reference of who is calling you. So, when we create this object, right, obj equal to car, then Honda and white, then obj will be passed first to your constructor and obj will take all these values into its memory. So, if we want to call any variable inside our methods, we have to always call that variable with self dot, like self dot brand or self dot color, like that. But in the other programming language, when we declare variables on the top, we can directly use them, but in Python that is not possible. So, one more thing, so here you printed the class variable also, right, you used self dot gear. You can to print the class variable, you can also use the class name. So, what is the class name here? Class name is car, right. So, you can write car dot gear also. Okay, let me execute. See, get the details of the car, Honda white 5, Maruti red 5. Actually, this is not required now. I think this was for our first lecture when we are understanding default constructor. Okay, this is not a default constructor, this is your parameterized constructor because you are passing the parameters. Okay, so that's why I commented this line, otherwise you will get confused why I am calling it as a default constructor. Okay, when we are not passing this brand and color, it was a default constructor, but when we are passing parameter, it is a parameterized constructor. Okay, so you saw this is also another way to call the class variables. So, either you can use the class name or you can use self also. Okay, you can use self also. So, self is like global and universal to call any variable. Okay, so what and all we learnt here? We learnt what is constructor. A constructor is a unique method in Python that is invoked automatically when a class object is created. The constructor name should be to underscore init, then to underscore. We learnt about the default constructor. The default constructor is a simple constructor that does not accept any arguments other than self. Then parameterized constructor can accept additional arguments to initialize the object's attributes with specific values. In Python, the keyword self represents an instance of class and is used to access its variables, attributes and methods. So, that is all for this lecture. See you in the next lecture. Thank you.